Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're in the Gospel of Mark today. We're still in the Mount of Olives discourse, where Jesus is answering a couple of questions. One of the questions is, when will the city of Jerusalem be destroyed? When will the temple be destroyed? And the other is, when is the end of time? And he's still answering that first question. When he started to answer that first question at the beginning of this chapter, he said, this is what the world is going to be like for you until that day arrives. And then he said, this is how you're going to be able to know to get out of town, to escape the destruction of the temple, the city of Jerusalem, and historic Judaism. And then today, he's going to describe these events in apocalyptic terms. So let's read these verses, and then let's talk about them for a minute. We're in chapter 13. I'm going to be reading verses 24 through 31. And here he's quoting Isaiah chapter 34, actually, beginning with verse 4, if you'd like to look that up later on. But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers that are in the heavens will be shaken, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. And then he will send forth the angels, and will gather together his elect from the four winds, from the farthest end of the earth to the farthest end of heaven. Now learn the parable of the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. Even so, you too, when you see these things happening, recognize he is near, right at the door. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But of that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven or the Son, but the Father alone. Apocalyptic is a genre of literature that we find in the Bible, from the prophets to Revelation. And there's apocalyptic in the Gospels, and there's apocalyptic in the book of Acts, most often quoting Old Testament apocalyptic and applying it to New Testament truth, which is what is happening here. Sort of. The book of Daniel is clearly and quite specifically looking forward into the future, describing multiple empires, describing Alexander the Great's conquest, describing the future destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans. And he's already quoted Daniel in an apocalyptic section of Daniel when he talks about the abomination of desolation in verse 14. So it's only natural that he would continue to refer to Old Testament apocalyptic. Now, apocalyptic is genre literature. Each genre has its conventions. Rom-coms, have the guy and the girl that seem like they don't fit, and then they do. And then there are multiple difficulties, but then in the end you have love's true kiss. I mean, whether that's a Disney princess movie or a Hallmark movie or, a Meg Ryan, Tom Hanks movie. I mean, that's got, Western, also a genre. And you've got, horses and guns and people south of the border and First Peoples and fortune hunters and cowboys, and you've got those. In sci-fi, you've got you've got your own conventions, you've got time travel, new inventions, new concepts, alien species. You've got all these things, but each genre has its own conventions. Apocalyptic is a certain kind of genre. It describes the end of an era, the end of an age, the end of an epoch. If you don't take a linear view of time, but a circular view of time, or even a spiral view of time, which the Bible does, read Ecclesiastes chapter 3. You have the end of an era, and then another era starts. Like you have the end of the patriarchal age, and then you have the Mosaic age. Judaism is coming to an end. God's covenant with his people that he gave on Mount Sinai, he is himself destroying with the fist of the Roman Empire, and it will cease to exist from that moment on and for all time. Judaism continues to exist as a religion somewhat. I mean, it is one of the great world religions, But Mosaic Judaism does not exist. No one's offering sacrifices at the temple in Jerusalem. There isn't a high priest. It's done. God destroyed it with the might of the Roman Empire. And therefore it's only fitting and proper that he describes this earth-shattering event in these terms. And that's why he can describe this event as a singularity, as something that is worse than anything that's ever happened before it, or that will subsequently happen in human history. What will happen at the end transitions us away from human history into eternity. So it's perfectly appropriate for him to use to go back to the Old Testament and pull those descriptions, those conventions of apocalyptic genre. The stars fall from the sky, the moon turns to blood, the universe puts out its lights. That's like finding cowboys in a Western. That's like having, a happy ending and love's true kiss at the end of a rom-com. If you don't have that, you don't have apocalyptic. It doesn't mean those things actually happen. And it doesn't mean it's the end of time. It means it's the end of an era. And then, after this happens, Christianity will be ascendant. And Jesus will be the primary feature of life on the planet. The cross is the most recognizable symbol on the planet. Jesus is the most recognizable human on the planet. More people follow Jesus in one way or another than follow anyone else. I mean, this has happened, and this is the way it's going to be until the end comes. But he makes clear that we know he's not telling us when to predict the moment of the end. Because of that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven or himself, but God alone. Okay. Well, thank you for your time today, and we'll finish up the chapter next time. This has been Barry Bryson. Thank you for joining me for what is now 7 good minutes.